There is something different about this moment. Not this week in general, not this month as a concept, but this specific moment. The one you are inside of right now, the one that brought you to this exact message at this exact point in your day. Something shifted in the atmosphere before you even pressed play. You may not have felt it consciously, but something in you knew. Something in you leaned forward. And that leaning, that quiet, almost involuntary movement toward this message is not an accident. It is not coincidence. It is not the algorithm. It is something far older and far more intentional than any of that. This is a declared moment. Heaven marked it before your morning began, before you opened your eyes today, before the first thought crossed your mind, before the first obligation pulled at your attention. This moment was already set apart. And the reason it was set apart is because of who you are, not who you are trying to become. Not who you will be after the next chapter, but who you already are right now. In the middle of everything you are still carrying. Beloved and chosen one, you need to hear this clearly. You did not find this message. This message found you. And there is a reason it found you today, in this season, in this particular state of heart. Because what heaven is about to do in your life requires that you understand something first. Something about surrender. Something about release. Something about what it actually means to stop holding the blueprint and trust the architect. But before we go there are some things you need to recognize about yourself. There are signs that mark you as one of the chosen. And if you have been walking through this season with confusion about why things feel so different, why you feel so different, these signs will land somewhere deep inside you, and they will not let go. The first sign is that you have been dreaming more vividly than usual. Not ordinary dreams. Dreams with detail, with weight, with a quality of meaning that lingers long after you wake. You find yourself lying still in the morning, trying to hold on to the edges of something you saw, but cannot fully name. That is not your mind processing stress. That is your spirit receiving communication. Heaven speaks to the chosen in images before it speaks in words. And the fact that your dream life has intensified is not random. It is a signal. The second sign is that you have been feeling a kind of restlessness that has no clean explanation. It is not anxiety in the clinical sense. It is not sadness with an identifiable cause. It is a deep, persistent sense that something is about to shift, and that you need to be ready, even though you do not know what you need to be ready for. People around you may have noticed that you seem distracted. They may have asked if you are okay, and you said yes because you did not have the words for what is actually happening. What is happening is that your spirit is being repositioned. Restlessness is not disorder. It is preparation. The third sign is that relationships and environments that used to feel comfortable have started to feel misaligned. People you have known for years suddenly feel distant. Not because anything specific happened, not because of a fight or a falling out, but because you are vibrating at a different frequency now, and the old connections are no longer a match. This is disorienting. It can feel like loss. But chosen ones understand eventually that not every separation is a wound. Some separations are a clearing. Heaven clears the path before it fills it. The fourth sign is that you have been circling the same prayer for longer than you expected. You have asked, you have trusted, you have waited, and then you have had to choose between trusting again or walking away from the whole conversation. And something in you, something stubborn and resilient and deeply anchored, keeps choosing to trust again. That is not weakness. That is not desperation. That is the mark of someone whose faith is being formed at a depth that ordinary seasons cannot produce. The fifth sign is the most specific one. You have been standing at the edge of something you cannot yet name, and you have been holding back. Not because you are afraid in a simple way, but because surrendering feels like losing. Because releasing the plan feels like abandoning the dream. Because trusting fully feels like it might cost you the last thing you have, the illusion of control. And you have been gripping that illusion very tightly, even as you prayed, even as you worshiped, even as you said the words out loud. Chosen one, you are an earth angel. You are part of a divine plan that was written before you were born. And every single thing that has brought you to this moment, every season of confusion, every unanswered prayer, every morning when you woke up and had to choose to keep going, all of it has been moving you toward this exact threshold. Heaven did not bring you this far to leave you here. Heaven brought you here to show you what it looks like when you finally open your hands. Today is not the day you give up. Today is the day you give over. And there is an enormous difference between those two things that this message is going to unfold for you in a way that will change how you see your entire journey. You have not been waiting for this moment. This moment has been waiting for you. There is a particular kind of ache that belongs to the surrender season, and it is unlike any other pain you have carried before. It is not loud. It does not announce itself dramatically or demand immediate attention the way grief does, the way anger does, the way heartbreak does. It is quieter than all of those things. It sits just beneath the surface of your daily functioning. In the space between the moment you wake up and the moment you remember what day it is, in the pause between finishing one task and starting the next. It is the ache of someone who has been faithful for a very long time and is still standing in the hallway, waiting for the door to open. And what makes this ache so difficult is that no one around you can fully see it. You have learned to carry it well. You have learned to show up, to smile, to answer questions about how you are doing with enough truth to feel honest and enough lightness to protect the conversation from going somewhere that would require you to actually say what is happening inside. You have become skilled at living in two places at once: the outer life that functions, that moves, that meets its obligations, and the inner life that is holding something so heavy that some mornings it takes a full minute of lying still before you can find the strength to get up. Beloved one, I want to name what you are feeling because no one in your daily life has named it for you. And there is something sacred that happens when the right words finally arrive for an experience you have been carrying alone. Here are 4 signs that will tell you whether you are in the surrender season right now. Not the season of waiting in general, not a difficult period, but specifically the surrender season. The one that comes just before heaven moves. The first sign is a sudden and unexpected wave of sadness about the past. It arrives without warning. You could be in the middle of a completely ordinary moment, washing dishes, sitting in traffic, watching something ordinary on a screen, and something reaches in and pulls you back to a version of your life that no longer exists. You feel the weight of what was. You feel the distance between who you were then and who you are now. And the sadness is not about regret exactly. It is more like mourning. You are grieving something that you cannot quite identify. And because you cannot identify it, you cannot explain it to anyone. And because you cannot explain it, you carry it quietly and alone. This wave is not a sign that you are moving backward. It is a sign that your spirit is doing the work of release. You cannot surrender what you have not first fully felt. The sadness is the first step of the letting go. The second sign is that familiar places and familiar people have begun to carry a weight they did not carry before. You return to places you have loved and something feels different. Not wrong exactly, but no longer fitting. You sit with people you have known for years and notice a distance that has nothing to do with conflict or with anything either of you said or did. The places feel smaller somehow. The conversations feel like they are happening at a level that no longer reaches you, and you wonder if something is wrong with you, if you are becoming cold or disconnected or ungrateful. But that is not what is happening. What is happening is that you are outgrowing the container. When God is preparing a chosen one for a new assignment, He first makes the old environment feel too small. The discomfort is not a malfunction, it is a measurement. It is heaven showing you that you have grown beyond what you are currently standing in. The third sign is a recurring image or dream that involves a door that has not been opened. You may see it in your sleep. You may feel it in your waking hours as a persistent intuition that something specific is waiting just beyond where you can currently see. The door appears in different forms for different people. For some, it is literal, a doorway they keep approaching in dreams but never walk through. For others, it is a feeling, a constant sense of being right on the edge of something that has not yet materialized. This recurring image is not your anxiety producing symbols of your own frustration. It is your spirit receiving a preview. The door you keep seeing in your dreams is real, and it is not locked. It is simply waiting for the moment when you release the old blueprint and allow heaven to open it from the other side. The fourth sign is that the same message keeps appearing to you in different forms, through different sources, at different times. You hear something in a conversation that echoes something you read the week before. You come across a verse that mirrors something you heard in a song. Someone says something in passing that lands with the same weight as something that has been pressing on your own spirit for months. And each time it appears, the message is essentially the same. It is telling you to release. It is telling you to trust. It is telling you that what you have been holding so tightly was never meant to be held by you alone. When a message begins to repeat itself across multiple channels of your life, that is not coincidence. That is heaven using every available avenue to reach you, because what it is trying to say is important enough to say more than once. Now, I want to speak to the specific pain underneath all of this, because you deserve to have it acknowledged without someone rushing past it to get to the encouragement. The insomnia is real. The nights when your mind will not stop cycling, when you lie in the dark and think about every decision you have ever made and every outcome you are still waiting on, when 3 a.m. feels like a courtroom where you are both the accused and the judge. That is real, and it is exhausting, and it is not a sign of weak faith. It is a sign of a person who cares deeply and has been holding responsibility for things that were never entirely theirs to hold. The loneliness is real too. Not the loneliness of being physically alone, but the loneliness of feeling unseen in a room full of people. The loneliness of knowing that what is happening inside you is something that your current circle does not have the language for. The loneliness of being in a season that requires a kind of inner work that cannot be explained over a casual meal or a brief phone call. You have been walking something that most people around you have not walked, and you have been walking it largely without a guide. The feeling of being wronged is real. There are things that happen to you, decisions that were made by others that affected your life in ways that were not fair, opportunities that should have come to you and did not, recognition that you earned and never received, doors that were closed before you even had the chance to knock, and you have tried to forgive. You have tried to release it, but the truth is that the wound is still there beneath the surface, and some days it aches in a way that makes it very hard to believe that any of this is working out for your good. The feeling of being misunderstood is real. You have tried to explain your faith, your calling, your sense of purpose, to people who looked at you with gentle but unmistakable skepticism. You have tried to hold onto the belief that you are meant for something specific, while everything in your visible circumstances seemed to argue against it. And there have been moments when you genuinely could not tell whether you were a person of vision or simply a person of wishful thinking. That doubt is not disqualifying. It is human, and it is shared by every single person who has ever walked the path you are walking right now. But here is what I need you to understand, because this reframing is going to change the entire way you see this season. Waiting is not punishment. Waiting is positioning. There is a version of waiting that looks like being abandoned, like being forgotten, like being placed on a shelf while everyone else moves forward. And then there is a version of waiting that is actually the most active, the most intentional, the most purposeful thing heaven can do with a person who is being prepared for something significant. The difference between the two is not always visible from the inside, but it is absolutely real. You were not overlooked. You were positioned. There is a critical difference between those two things that most people never understand, and the not understanding of it is what causes chosen ones to walk away from the threshold just before the door opens. To be overlooked means you were seen and passed by, that someone looked at your value and decided it was not enough. But to be positioned means that someone who knows the full picture, who sees the beginning and the end simultaneously, deliberately placed you exactly where you are, because that placement is necessary for what comes next. You have not been passed over. You have been placed, and the placement is precise. God does not position carelessly. Every day of this waiting season, every moment of the silence, every night of the unanswered prayer, it has all been the deliberate, careful, loving work of a Father who knows what He is building in you and refuses to rush it, because what He is building is meant to last. If this is landing somewhere real inside you right now, if you feel these words touching something you have been carrying alone for a long time, I want you to type the word re-ank in the comments below, not because it is a ritual, not because it changes an algorithm, but because the act of claiming it matters. Saying re-eek is you telling heaven out loud that you are open, that your hands are unclenching, that you are ready to stop managing and start trusting. And if this message has been the first place in a long time where someone has put language to what you have been living through, I want to ask you something gently and honestly. This channel exists because people like you show up and make it possible. If you feel moved to support the work of reaching other chosen ones who are in the middle of their own surrender season, people who are lying awake at 3 in the morning with no one to name it for them, you can give through the donate link in the description below. Even a small amount keeps this message moving. Not for recognition, not for numbers, but so that the next person who needs to hear that they have not been overlooked, that they have been positioned, can find their way here too. If this has served you, help it serve someone else. That is the simplest and most powerful thing you can do with what you just received. And while you are there, take a moment to like this video and share it with one person who you know is in a waiting season right now. Subscribe so that the next message finds you as surely as this one did. You are not alone in this, and neither are they. Something needs to be said before we move into what comes next, and it is this: understanding is not enough. You can hear the most accurate, the most penetrating, the most spiritually precise description of your season, and still walk away unchanged if all you do is receive it as information. What transforms a person is not what they understand. It is what they practice. It is what they return to, day after day, in the small and ordinary moments when no one is watching and no inspiration is carrying them forward. It is the quiet discipline of showing up for the inner work, even when the outer results are not yet visible. And so this part of the message is not about more revelation. It is about something you can actually do today. Something simple enough to begin in the next hour, and powerful enough that if you commit to it consistently, the changes in your inner landscape will become undeniable within days. Not weeks, not months. Days. The tool I want to introduce to you is called the Surrender Protocol. I want you to hold that name for a moment before I explain it, because the word surrender has probably been loaded with meanings in your life that do not serve you. Surrender has felt like losing. It has felt like admitting defeat, like giving up, like handing your future to someone else and hoping for the best while you stand back with empty hands. That version of surrender is not what this is. The Surrender Protocol is not about passivity. It is not about sitting in a corner and waiting for something to fall from the sky. It is an active, intentional, daily practice of repositioning your inner life so that you become a person who can actually receive what heaven has been holding for you. Because here is the truth that most people in the chosen season eventually discover. The breakthrough was not delayed because heaven was not ready. The breakthrough was delayed because the person who was meant to receive it was not yet in the posture to hold it. You cannot receive what you are not open to. You cannot hold what your hands are still too clenched to grasp. And the Surrender Protocol is the daily practice of opening, of unclenching, of becoming one day at a time a person whose inner posture matches the outer breakthrough that is already in motion. This protocol has 3 steps. They are simple enough that you can do them anywhere. You do not need a special location. You do not need a certain time of day, though mornings tend to carry a particular clarity that makes this work go deeper. You do not need any equipment, any training, any prior experience with meditation or spiritual practice. What you need is 7 minutes and the willingness to show up honestly for all 3 of them. Step 1 is what I call the gratitude of the prevented. This is different from ordinary gratitude, and the difference matters enormously. Ordinary gratitude looks at what happened and gives thanks for it. The gratitude of the prevented looks at what did not happen and gives thanks for that. It looks at the relationship that did not work out and recognizes that if it had, you would not be free for what is coming. It looks at the opportunity that closed and recognizes that if it had opened, it would have taken you in the wrong direction at exactly the wrong time. It looks at the door that did not open and says, "Thank you, because the door that is meant for me is still ahead. And the fact that this one stayed closed kept me on the right path." To practice this step, sit quietly and bring to mind one specific thing that did not happen in your life. Something you wanted, something you prayed for, something you worked toward that ultimately did not materialize. Do not rush through this. Sit with the memory of it fully, including the disappointment, including the confusion, including the grief of it. And then, from that full and honest place, say these words out loud or in your heart. Say them slowly and mean them as completely as you can. Say this: I release my interpretation of this moment. I trust the wisdom of the one who sees what I cannot see. What was prevented was protection, and I receive it as such. That is step 1. It sounds simple. It is not easy, because what it asks you to do is relinquish the story you have built around your own disappointment. And that story has been with you for a long time. It has felt like truth. It has felt like the only honest account of what happened. And releasing it, even partially, even with doubt still present in your chest, is one of the most powerful inner acts a chosen one can perform. Step 2 is what I call the declaration of sacred now. This step is built on a specific understanding of time that we are going to explore in much greater depth later in this message. But I want to introduce it here because it belongs in the daily practice before it belongs in the explanation. The declaration of sacred now is a single spoke statement that repositions you in time. Because one of the primary ways that the enemy of your peace keeps you locked in cycles of frustration and delay is by keeping your mind either in the past or in the future, either replaying what should have been different or projecting forward into what might still go wrong. And the practice of the declaration of sacred now pulls you out of both of those time traps and places you firmly in the only moment where heaven can actually reach you, which is this one. The declaration goes like this. Speak it out loud if you are able. Speak it with full intention, not as a performance, but as a genuine act of inner repositioning. Say these words. I am not behind. I am not early. I am exactly where I am supposed to be in this moment, and this moment is enough to begin. Heaven is not waiting for a better version of me to show up. Heaven is meeting me exactly here, exactly now, and I choose to be fully present for that meeting. Repeat this declaration 3 times before moving into step 3. The first time you say it, you are informing your mind. The second time, you are inviting your heart to agree. The third time, you are anchoring it in your body, letting it settle into the physical self that has been carrying the weight of the past and the anxiety of the future for far too long. 3 repetitions, each one slower and more deliberate than the last. And then you arrive at step 3, which is the part of this practice that I need you to take most seriously, because it is the part that ties directly into something we are about to discuss in the next section of this message. Step 3 is 7 minutes of silent practice. 7 minutes, that is all. Not an hour, not a formal meditation session with cushions and candles, though those are beautiful if you have them. Just 7 minutes of deliberate, intentional silence in which you do one thing and one thing only. You breathe and you listen. During these 7 minutes, you are not trying to empty your mind. That is not the goal, and it is not realistic for most people, especially those of us who are in seasons of high mental activity. Instead, you are practicing what I call receptive stillness. You are not reaching for anything. You are not pushing anything away. You are simply creating a space in which something that has been trying to reach you can finally land. Think of it this way. You have been in a conversation for a very long time in which you have been doing most of the talking. The prayers, the plans, the questions, the bargaining, the processing out loud, and none of that is wrong. All of it has mattered. But there is a word that heaven has been trying to get in edgewise, and it cannot reach you while the conversation is one-directional. The 7 minutes of silence is your way of saying, I am done talking for right now. I am ready to listen. During these 7 minutes, you may notice your breath slowing. You may notice a warmth in your chest that was not there before. You may notice thoughts arising and passing without the usual urgency they carry. You may notice nothing at all, and that is completely fine. The practice works even when it does not feel like anything is happening. In fact, some of the most significant inner shifts that people have reported from this practice happened on the days that felt the most unremarkable. The days when nothing seemed to be occurring at all were often the days when the deepest repositioning was taking place beneath the level of conscious awareness. 7 minutes. Every day. Non-negotiable if you are serious about entering the next season with your spirit fully aligned and your inner posture ready to receive what is coming. Now I want to say something important about why 7 minutes specifically. Because you might be wondering whether 5 would be enough, whether 10 would be better, whether the number matters at all. It does matter, and the reason it matters is not arbitrary. Research into the relationship between intentional silence and the brain's receptive states has shown consistently that 7 minutes represents a threshold point. It is the point at which the brain begins to shift from its default mode of active processing into a state of deeper receptivity. Below 7 minutes, most people are still in the process of settling. Above 7 minutes, the benefits continue to accumulate, but the entry point, the moment when the shift actually begins to occur, consistently appears at around the 7-minute mark. This is not a spiritual claim dressed in scientific language. It is an observation that has emerged from serious, long-term research into brainwave activity and its relationship to states of receptivity, creativity, and what researchers describe as heightened cognitive and emotional openness. And in the next part of this message, I am going to introduce you to the work of one researcher in particular, whose findings in this area are going to reframe everything you thought you knew about why certain people seem to receive breakthrough more readily than others, and what the difference between them and you actually is. But before we go there, I want you to make a commitment right now, not to me, not to this channel, to yourself. Make the commitment that starting today, you will give 7 minutes every single day to the surrender protocol. Step 1, the gratitude of the prevented. Step 2, the declaration of sacred now. Step 3, 7 minutes of receptive stillness. This for 7 consecutive days, and pay attention to what begins to shift. Not dramatically, not necessarily visibly, but internally. In the quality of your thoughts, in the weight that you carry, in the way the morning feels when you open your eyes. The chosen ones who have committed to this practice consistently report the same thing. They say that after 7 days, the season feels different. Not because the circumstances have changed, but because they have. And when the person changes, everything that is waiting for that person begins to move toward them with momentum that was not present before. You are capable, ready for this. And what comes next in this message is going to give you a deeper understanding of exactly why this practice works at the level it works, and what is actually happening in your brain and in your spirit during those 7 quiet minutes. Stay with me. Stay with me here, because what I am about to share with you is the bridge between everything you have felt spiritually and everything that science has quietly been confirming for decades. And when these two things meet inside the same conversation, something shifts. Not just in your understanding, but in your permission. Because sometimes the reason we do not fully commit to a practice, the reason we do not fully lean into a process, is that we are waiting for confirmation from 2 directions at once. We want our spirit to say yes, and we want our mind to agree. And what I am about to share with you gives both of those things something solid to stand on. Here is what researchers have observed about people who carry what can only be described as a different kind of frequency. And I do not use that word loosely or poetically. I mean it in a precise and measurable sense. When scientists study the brainwave activity of individuals who demonstrate unusually high levels of creativity, intuition, rapid learning, and what some researchers describe as a kind of knowing that arrives ahead of the logical process, they find a consistent pattern. These individuals produce significantly higher levels of a specific brainwave frequency. Researchers call it gamma. Gamma is not a new discovery. It has been studied for decades, but the significance of what gamma actually represents has only begun to be understood in the last 30 years. Gamma waves operate at a frequency of approximately 40 Hz and above, and they are associated with states of heightened awareness, peak cognitive performance, moments of sudden insight, and what many describe as a sense of profound clarity and connection. They are the brainwaves present during what researchers call eureka moments. They are the frequency of breakthrough. And here is what is most striking about this finding for you, chosen one. The individuals who produce the highest levels of gamma activity are not necessarily the most educated. They are not the ones with the most resources or the most favorable circumstances. They are the ones who have learned, through intention or through experience, to access a specific inner state that allows gamma to emerge. And the gateway to that state, the threshold frequency that the brain moves through on its way to gamma, is called theta. Theta waves operate between 4 and 8 Hz, and they are the frequency of the deep creative mind. They are present during the moments just before sleep and just after waking. They are active during deep prayer, during genuine worship, during states of profound inner quiet. Children produce theta waves abundantly and naturally, which is why children learn languages in months that take adults years, why children create without self-consciousness, why children dream with a vividness and a freedom that most adults have lost access to. As we grow older, as the demands of adult life accumulate, as the weight of responsibility and disappointment and the constant management of a complex world presses in, our theta activity diminishes. We spend more and more time in beta, the frequency of active problem solving and stress response, and less time in the theta state where creativity, intuition, and genuine receptivity live. The 7 minutes of silent practice I gave you in the last section is not random. It is specifically designed to guide your brain back toward that theta gateway. And what I am about to introduce to you now is a tool that accelerates that process in a way that 7 minutes of unaided silence alone cannot fully achieve. The researcher whose work forms the foundation of this tool is a neuroscientist named Dr. James Rivers. Dr. Rivers spent more than 30 years studying the relationship between brainwave activity and human potential. His work was conducted in affiliation with some of the most rigorous scientific institutions in the world, including research connected to programs at MIT and NASA, where the study of human cognitive performance under extraordinary conditions produced findings that most of the mainstream conversation about the brain has not yet caught up with. Dr. Rivers dedicated decades specifically to the question of why certain individuals seem to operate at a different cognitive and creative level than the people around them, even when their educational background and their circumstances are comparable. And what he found, after thousands of hours of research and documentation, pointed consistently to one thing: brainwave frequency. The specific mechanism that Dr. Rivers identified is called brainwave entrainment. And while the name sounds technical, the principle behind it is actually elegant in its simplicity. The brain has a natural tendency to synchronize with rhythmic external signals. This is not a new phenomenon. It has been observed throughout human history in the use of drumming in ceremonial contexts, in the rhythmic recitation of prayer and scripture, in the use of chant and tonal music across virtually every spiritual tradition on earth. What these ancient practices intuitively understood, and what modern neuroscience has now confirmed with measurable data, is that the brain can be guided into specific frequency states through carefully calibrated sound. Dr. Rivers took this principle and spent years refining it into an audio tool that uses a combination of binaural beats and isochronic tones, precisely calculated sound frequencies that the brain naturally follows, to guide the listener from their default state of beta activity through the theta gateway and into the elevated frequency range associated with gamma. The result is a 7-minute audio experience that does what most people spend years of meditation practice trying to achieve. It creates the conditions in which your brain, and by extension your spirit, can receive what it has been trying to access. This tool is called the Genius Wave, and I want to be careful about how I introduce it to you, because it is not a magic solution and I would never present it to you as one. It is a tool, a precise, well-researched, and genuinely effective tool that works because it is built on real science and applied with real care. What it does is remove the barrier. It removes the friction between where your brain is and where your brain needs to be in order for the 7 minutes of receptive stillness to work at its deepest level. Think of it this way. The surrender protocol I gave you in the last section is the practice. The Genius Wave is what makes that practice accessible even on the days when your mind is racing, when the stress is high, when the weight of the season makes it nearly impossible to settle on your own. Now I want to share something with you that comes directly from the people who have used this tool, because their experiences speak more clearly than anything I could explain in the abstract. A woman named Sandra had been in what she described as a complete mental fog for nearly 2 years. She was functioning, she was showing up, but she felt like she was thinking through glass. She could not access the clarity she needed to make the decisions her life was asking her to make. She began using the Genius Wave for 7 minutes each morning as part of a daily practice similar to the surrender protocol. Within 10 days, she told Dr. Rivers that something had cleared. Not everything, not all at once, but a clarity she had not felt in 2 years began returning, quietly and consistently, until the decisions she had been paralyzed by began to resolve themselves with a naturalness that surprised her. A man named Marcus had been carrying a creative block for 3 years. He was a writer who could not write, and the frustration of that had begun to affect every other area of his life. He tried everything: therapy, journaling, long walks, changing his environment. Nothing moved the block. 7 days into using the Genius Wave, he sat down at his desk and wrote for 4 hours without stopping. He said afterward that it did not feel like the block had been removed. It felt like he had been returned to himself. These are not isolated experiences. More than 19,000 people have now used the Genius Wave, and the rate of people who have asked for their money back is under 4%. That number matters, because it means that the overwhelming majority of people who brought this tool into their lives found it worth keeping. Now I want to speak to something honestly before I tell you what this costs, because I know some of you are already having the thought. I know some of you are thinking that $39 is not nothing, and you are right. It is not nothing. Especially if this season has been a financially tight one, especially if you have been spending money on things that promised results and did not deliver them, especially if trust is something you are currently low on because too many things have asked for it and not returned it. That thought is valid. I am not going to dismiss it or rush past it. What I will say is this: $39 is the current price of the Genius Wave, reduced from its standard price of $49, and it is available at that price through the single link in the pinned comment below this video. It comes with a 90-day money-back guarantee, not 30 days, 90. That is 3 full months to use this tool every single day and evaluate honestly whether it is doing what it claims to do. If at any point in those 90 days you feel that it has not served you, you contact the team and you receive your money back in full. No argument, no complicated process. The confidence behind that guarantee is itself a statement about what Dr. Rivers and his team believe this tool will do for you. But I need to say something important about how you access it, because there are versions of this product circulating online that are not the real thing. There are counterfeit copies, modified files, unofficial versions that do not contain the precise frequency calibrations that make the genius wave work. If you do not get it through the official link, you cannot be sure of what you are getting. The only link I can verify, the only link I will ever direct you to, is the one in the pinned comment below this video. That is the only place I want you to go. And one more thing. The price of $39 is not permanent. It is available for a limited time and a limited number of purchases at this rate before it returns to the standard $49. I am not telling you this to pressure you into a decision. I am telling you because if this message has been speaking to something real in you today, if the 7 minutes of practice resonated, if the idea of finally having a tool that meets you where you are and moves your brain into the receptive state where real change can happen feels like something your season is asking for, then waiting on this particular decision is not patience. It is hesitation. And your season has no more room for hesitation. The link is in the pinned comment. It is there right now. And so is the version of you that is ready to receive everything that heaven has been holding in preparation for this moment. Before we move forward, I need to stay in this place with you for a moment longer. Because what Part 4 offered you was a tool, a resource, a practical bridge between where you are and where you are going. And that is real, and it matters. I stand behind every word of it. But there is something that needs to be said before we talk about new seasons and open doors and what is coming next. Something that the encouragement culture has a tendency to skip over too quickly in its eagerness to get to the good news. And I refuse to skip over it with you, because you have earned the right to have this part acknowledged fully and without rushing. The years cost you something. And I am not going to reframe that immediately. I am not going to dress it in spiritual language right away, or tell you quickly that it was all for a reason. Because even when that is true, even when the reason is real and the purpose is genuine, it does not erase the fact that the waiting extracted a price from your life that was significant and real and that deserves to be named out loud. So let me name it. The relationships. Think about the relationships that could have been built during the years of this waiting season. The friendships that required an investment of time and presence and emotional availability that you simply did not have because so much of your inner resource was being consumed by the weight of what you were carrying. Think about the people who tried to reach you and found you distracted, or guarded, or simply too depleted to show up the way you wanted to. Think about the connections that drifted, not because anyone chose to walk away, but because the season made you unavailable in ways that were not your fault, but were still your loss. Those relationships matter. The ones that thinned, the ones that faded, the ones that never had the chance to deepen the way they might have in a different season. You did not get those years back. And the relationships that might have been built in them are real losses, not small ones. The career. Think about where your professional life could have gone if the weight of this season had not been sitting on your shoulders through so much of it. Think about the decisions you might have made with more confidence if your inner life had not been so consumed by the work of holding yourself together. Think about the risks you did not take because the uncertainty of the season made risk feel unbearable. The opportunities you passed on because you did not have the clarity or the energy or the emotional bandwidth to pursue them fully. Think about the version of your career that exists in the space between where you are and where you could have been, and feel the weight of that distance honestly. It is real. It is a real cost of real years, and you are allowed to grieve it, the freedom of the big dream. There was a version of you, not so long ago, who spoke about the big dream with a kind of openness that this season slowly taught you to restrain. Because when you speak a big dream out loud, in a season where nothing seems to be confirming it, the gap between the dream and the reality becomes a source of pain rather than a source of fuel. And so you learn to hold it more quietly. You learn to keep it closer to your chest, to share it less freely, to protect it from the skepticism of others by making it smaller in public, even while you tried to keep it alive in private. And something was lost in that. Contraction. The freedom to dream out loud. The freedom to speak about your future with the kind of expansive confidence that a person unweighted by years of unanswered questions can speak with. That freedom was taken from you gradually, and you may not have even noticed it happening until you found yourself one day unable to remember the last time you spoke about your future with genuine excitement, rather than careful, measured hope. The faith in yourself. This one sits the deepest because the external losses, the relationships, and the career, and the dreams, those are painful. But the loss of faith in yourself is the one that does the most damage at the root level. There were things you believed about your own capacity, your own gifts, your own ability to create and contribute and build, that the years of waiting quietly eroded. Not all at once, not through any single moment of failure or rejection, but through the accumulation of unanswered prayers and unrealized expectations, and the constant low-grade message that the season seemed to be sending, which was that perhaps what you believed about yourself was simply not true. Perhaps the gifts were smaller than you thought. Perhaps the calling was less specific. Perhaps you had misread the signs. That doubt, planted in the soil of a long and silent season, grew into something that affects the way you walk into rooms, the way you begin conversations, the way you approach new opportunities with a protective hesitation that was not there before. The faith in yourself that this season cost you is perhaps the most significant loss of all, because it is the one that affects everything else. I am sitting with all of that with you right now. I am not moving past it. I am not offering a reframe. I am simply acknowledging that what you have paid is real, that the price of this season has been high, and that you are not dramatic or faithless or ungrateful for feeling the weight of that cost fully. And now, I want to tell you about a man named Joseph, not the whole story, just the part that matches where you are right now. Joseph was a young man who carried a dream so vivid and so specific that it set him apart from everyone around him. He had a sense of destiny that was real and divinely sourced, and he spoke about it with the kind of openness that only someone who has not yet been taught to protect their dreams speaks with. And the world responded to that openness not with celebration, but with cruelty. His own brothers, the people who should have been his closest circle, his safest place, stripped him of the coat that represented his identity and his belonging, and threw him into a pit, and then sold him into slavery, into a foreign country, into a life that bore no resemblance whatsoever to the dream he had been given. And then it got worse, because Joseph, who had done nothing wrong, who had served faithfully in the house of Potiphar and built something meaningful, even in the middle of a life he had not chosen, was falsely accused by someone he had refused to compromise himself for, and he was thrown into prison, into a deeper pit than the first one, into a darkness that was not just physical, but existential. Because in that prison, Joseph had to sit with the gap between what he had been shown and what his life had actually become. He had to hold a dream about elevation while sitting in a dungeon. He had to maintain a sense of divine purpose while the evidence of his daily life argued against every word of it. I am not going to tell you about the resolution yet, because right now, what matters is this part: the pit, the slavery, the false accusation, the prison, the years of that, the specific, grinding, dignity-stripping weight of carrying a big dream in a small and unjust circumstance. Joseph paid a price for his season that was real and significant, and that the encouraging parts of his story do not erase. He lost years. He lost his family. He lost his freedom. He lost the early chapters of the life he was supposed to be living, and those chapters were not given back to him. What came after was greater, yes, but the cost of the waiting was real, and the Joseph who emerged from prison was not the same young man who had been thrown into the pit. He was shaped by those years in ways that were both beautiful and permanently marked. And so are you. You are not the same person who entered this season. The years have changed you, and not only in the ways that hurt. They have also built something in you that could not have been built any other way. A depth of compassion that only comes from sustained personal suffering. A clarity of discernment that only comes from years of learning to tell the difference between what is real and what is noise. A quietness of confidence that is completely different from the loud confidence of someone who has never been tested. Because your confidence, when it returns fully, will not be built on favorable circumstances. It will be built on the knowledge that you survived the unfavorable ones. But we are not rushing to that conclusion yet. Because the cost is real, and it deserves its full moment of acknowledgement before we move forward. What was taken from you in these years was not small. The relationships, the career momentum, the freedom of the big dream, the faith in yourself. Every one of those losses is real and significant and worthy of grief. And the grief does not make you weak. It does not make you faithless. It does not disqualify you from what is coming. It makes you honest. An honest people. People who can look at the full cost of their season without flinching, without minimizing, without rushing to the reframe before. The grief has had its full say. Those are the people who are ready to receive what comes next with the kind of wholeness that makes the reception lasting. You have paid something real to be standing where you are right now. And what is coming is not a consolation prize for the years that were hard. It is the culmination of everything those years were building toward. Not despite the cost. Because of it. Stay with me. Because the next thing I want to share with you is going to change the time itself. And in doing so, it is going to change the way you understand everything that has happened to you in this season. There is a conversation that has been happening inside you for a very long time, and it goes something like this. You ask yourself whether it is still coming, whether the thing you were shown, that the thing you were promised, the thing you have held on to through every difficult night and every disappointing morning, whether it is still in motion or whether it quietly stopped somewhere along the way without anyone telling you. You ask yourself whether you missed something, whether there was a moment when a different choice would have unlocked a different outcome, whether the window has passed, whether the season you were meant to walk into is now behind you rather than ahead of you. And this conversation, this quiet and persistent internal dialogue, is one of the most exhausting things a chosen one carries, because it never fully stops. It just gets louder in the dark and quieter in the daylight, cycling endlessly between hope and doubt, between trust and the very reasonable fear that trust has limits. I want to give you something today that will interrupt that cycle. Not by telling you to stop having the conversation, because you cannot stop it by willpower alone, but by giving you a framework, a way of understanding time itself. That makes the conversation unnecessary. Because most of the anguish of the waiting season comes not from the waiting itself, but from the way we have been taught to measure time. And when the measurement changes, the experience of what you are living through changes with it. The ancient Greeks had two separate words for time, and the distinction between them is one of the most important things I can give you in this entire message. The first word was chronos. Chronos is clock time. It is the time that moves in a straight line from left to right, the time that can be measured in seconds and minutes and days and years, the time that accumulates and depletes, the time that makes you feel like you are behind because it keeps moving forward regardless of whether you are ready. Chronos is the time of calendars and deadlines and the slow arithmetic of how old you are and how much of your expected life has already been used. Chronos is the time that whispers to you in the early hours that it is getting late, that other people your age have already arrived somewhere you have not yet reached, that the gap between where you are and where you expected to be by now is evidence of something gone wrong. Most of us live almost entirely inside Chronos. We measure our seasons by it. We measure our worth by it. We measure the faithfulness of God by it, counting the days since the prayer was first spoken, and using that count as evidence either for or against the likelihood of an answer. And when we live inside Chronos, the waiting feels like subtraction. Every passing day is a day removed from the total. Every year that passes without the breakthrough is a year that cannot be recovered. Inside Chronos, delay always means loss, but the second Greek word for time was kairos. And kairos is a completely different animal. Kairos does not move in a straight line. It does not accumulate or deplete. It does not care about calendars or deadlines or the arithmetic of expectation. Kairos is the time of the right moment. It is the time of the timely arrival, the appointed intersection, the moment when everything that has been in preparation converges with everything that has been in motion, and the result is something that could not have happened a single day earlier without being incomplete. Kairos is the time of the suddenly, of the unexpected morning when the phone rings with the call you stopped expecting, of the encounter that happens in an ordinary place that turns out to be the most significant meeting of your life, of the door that opens not because you finally figured out the right way to knock, but because the appointed moment arrived and the door was always going to open then and not before. Here is what this means for you specifically. The years of waiting that you have been measuring in Chronos, the years that have felt like subtraction, like loss, like evidence of something gone wrong, those years look completely different inside Kairos. Inside Kairos, those years are not empty. They are full. They are the fullness of preparation. They are the accumulation of everything that needed to be built in you before the appointed moment could arrive and find you ready to receive it. The delay was not a malfunction of the promise. It was the faithfulness of a God who operates in Kairos, who does not release what he has ordained before the moment that was appointed for its release, because releasing it too early would not serve you. It would overwhelm you. It would arrive in soil that was not yet ready to hold it. What God has ordained, delay cannot cancel. That is not a motivational statement. It is a structural truth about the nature of Kairos time. The appointment was made before you were born. It has your name on it. It has been held in place through every season of your life, through every moment when you almost gave up, through every night when you were not sure you had enough left to keep going. The appointment is still standing, and you are still walking toward it, not behind schedule, on schedule, in Kairos. And now I want to give you the second concept, because it builds on this foundation and takes it somewhere even more specific and even more personal for the season you are in right now, the door season. This is the name given to the phase of life that comes after the long preparation, after the wilderness, after the years of being built in ways that were invisible to everyone around you, and sometimes invisible even to yourself. The door season is the post-challenge phase, the time when what was prepared in private begins to manifest in the open, when the doors that have been waiting for the prepared person begin to appear in the path of the prepared person. And here is what is critical to understand about the door season. What makes it different from simply things getting better? Not everyone can see the doors of the door season. Only the prepared person can recognize them, because the doors of this season do not always look like what you expected a door to look like. They do not always arrive with fanfare or with obvious signage. They arrive with a quality of peace that is recognizable only to someone who has learned to tell the difference between a door that comes from God and a door that is simply open. Not every door comes from God, but this door brings His peace. That is the distinguishing mark of the door season breakthrough. The opportunities that begin to appear in this coming phase of your life will not feel like the frantic, anxious pursuit of something you have to chase before it disappears. They will feel like a recognition, like something stepping into a space that was already prepared for it, like a key fitting a lock that was made for exactly that key. You will know, not because it is perfect or because it is without challenge, but because underneath everything, even underneath the newness and the uncertainty, there will be a peace that is unmistakable to someone who has spent years learning what the absence of it feels like. But I want to be honest with you about something. The door season does not begin in the circumstances. It begins inside you. The door does not open first in the external world and then change how you feel inside. It opens first inside you, in the moment of genuine surrender. In the moment when you finally release the blueprint you have been gripping and allow the architect to work without interference. And then the external doors begin to follow. This is the sequence. Interior release first, exterior manifestation second, which means that everything we have been building toward in this message, the surrender protocol, the 7 minutes of receptive stillness, the honest grieving of the cost, the reframing of the years through the lens of Kairos rather than Chronos, all of it has been preparing your interior landscape for the opening that is already in motion. You are not waiting to be ready. You are not waiting for something outside yourself to change first. You are in the process of becoming the person who can recognize the door when it appears. And that process is much further along than you have given yourself credit for. There is a moment in the life of every chosen one when the understanding arrives. Not the breakthrough itself, not yet, but the understanding. The moment when the fog clears just enough to see that the long road was not a detour, that the painful years were not wasted years, that the isolation was not abandonment but preparation, that the appointments that seemed to be missed were actually being held in place, waiting for the Kairos moment that had been ordained before the foundation of the world. That moment of understanding is called the hour of revelation. And for many people who are hearing this message right now, this is that hour. This is the moment when it begins to make sense. Not all of it, not the parts that still ache, but the shape of it, the purpose of it, the direction of it. The appointed time for your breakthrough has not passed. It has not been moved. It has not been given to someone else. It is standing exactly where it was placed, at the precise intersection of the preparation that has been happening in you And the moment that heaven determined before you were born was the right moment for its release. You are walking toward that intersection right now. Every step you have taken through this season, every morning you chose to get up and keep going. Every prayer you offered when you were not sure anyone was listening. Every moment of faith you managed to sustain when the evidence for it was invisible. All of it has been moving you forward. All of it has been counting. All of it has been building toward the Kairos moment that is closer than it has ever been. The door is not somewhere far ahead of you in the distance. It is not in another season, another year, another version of your life that you have to somehow survive your way to. It is at the end of the path you are currently walking. And the path is shorter than the Chronos counting has made it feel. Keep walking. The door season has already begun. You are already inside it. You just need to learn to recognize what its doors look like. And that recognition is exactly what this next part of the message is going to give you. Something is moving. I need you to feel that before I explain it, before I give it language or structure, or the kind of organized clarity that the mind prefers. Before any of that, just sit with the sensation for a moment. Something is moving, not in the distance, not in some future version of your life that you have to wait another long season to inhabit. Something is moving right now. In this moment, in the landscape of your life as it actually is today. You may not have the evidence for it yet. The circumstances may look exactly the same as they did last week, last month, last year, but the atmosphere has shifted, and chosen ones learn over the course of to trust the atmosphere before the evidence arrives. Because the evidence always follows the atmosphere. The manifestation always follows the shift, and the shift has already happened. I feel something inside that is coming. That is the sentence that lives in the chest of every person who is standing at the threshold of the door season. You cannot fully articulate it. You cannot prove it to anyone who asks for proof. But you know it the way you know when the weather is about to change, before the clouds have finished gathering. Something in the air is different. Something in the quality of your mornings is different. Something in the way certain thoughts arrive, and the way they feel when they land is different. And that difference is not wishful thinking. It is spiritual perception. It is the antenna of a prepared person beginning to receive signals from the frequency that the breakthrough is broadcasting on. Let me be specific with you about what is moving, because vague encouragement without concrete description is not what you need in this season. You need to be able to recognize what is coming so that you do not miss it when it arrives in a form that does not match your expectations. The first thing that is moving is in the area of your relationships. And I need you to hear this carefully, because what is about to happen in your relational life will feel disorienting at first, before it feels like the gift it actually is. People are going to leave. Not dramatically, not necessarily with conflict, or with a clear moment of rupture, but quietly and naturally, the way a tide goes out. People who have been in your life for a long time, people you care about genuinely, are going to find that the alignment between your paths is simply no longer what it was. And you are going to feel the pull to hold on, to work harder at the connection, to close the distance through effort and intention. And I want to say to you clearly and with love, let them go. Not with bitterness, not with the story that they abandoned you or that they were not real, but with the recognition that the clearing of your relational landscape is not a loss. It is a preparation. Heaven is creating space. And space, in the life of a chosen one standing at the threshold of the door season, is not emptiness, it is availability. Because here is what follows the leaving. New people are going to appear. and they are going to appear with a specificity that will take your breath away. They will arrive at the right place at the right time, and when you meet them, you will have the immediate and unmistakable sense that this person was sent. Not stumbled upon, not coincidentally encountered, sent. They will carry something you need, and you will carry something they need, and the exchange will feel less like a new friendship forming and more like a recognition. Like two people who have been walking toward the same point from different directions and have finally arrived at it simultaneously. These relationships will not require the maintenance and the management and the careful navigation that the old connections demanded. They will feel like ease, like coming home to a place you have never physically been before but somehow already know. The emotions you are experiencing as this relational shift begins are predictable, and they are valid. You will feel grief for what is leaving before you feel gratitude for what is coming. You will feel the loneliness of the in-between, the period when the old connections have loosened and the new ones have not yet fully formed. You will feel moments of doubt about whether you made the right choice, about whether you should have held on harder, about whether the clearing was actually a mistake, dressed up as a divine appointment. These feelings are not signs that something is going wrong. They are signs that something real is happening. Real transitions feel like loss before they feel like gain. That is not a malfunction. That is the nature of genuine change. The second thing that is moving is in the area of your purpose. And this one is going to arrive in a way that is quieter than you expected, which is why I need to describe it carefully so you do not miss it. The question that has been circling in your life for so long, the question of what you are supposed to be doing, what your specific assignment is, what the unique contribution that only you can make actually looks like in practical terms. That question is about to answer itself, not through a dramatic revelation from above, not through a sudden and unmistakable calling that removes all ambiguity in an instant, but through one clear small step. You are going to be standing in an ordinary moment, and you are going to know what the next step is, just the next step. Not the whole staircase, not the complete blueprint, not the 5-year plan. One step, and it is going to feel so clear, so obviously right, so aligned with everything that has been stirring in your spirit during this season, that you are going to wonder why it took so long to see it. The answer to that question is Kairos. It took this long because this is when it was appointed to arrive. Earlier would have been premature. This is the right moment. That step presents itself, and it will. I need you to take it without waiting for confirmation from every direction. Do not pole your circle. Do not wait until the fear is completely gone. Do not delay the step until you can see the one that follows it. Take the one step that is clear. That is all that is being asked of you. One clear step in the direction of the thing that your spirit has been whispering to you through this entire season. The rest of the staircase will reveal itself one step at a time as you move. This is how purpose unfolds in the life of a chosen one. Not all at once, step by illuminated step. The third thing that is moving is in the area of your resources, your opportunities. And I want to be careful here because I know that this is the area where you have been disappointed most specifically, where the gap between what you have needed and what has been available has been a source of real and sustained pain. So I am not going to make grand promises about sudden windfalls or overnight reversals. What I am going to tell you is what is actually beginning to move in this area, which is quieter than those promises but far more lasting. The fighting is ending. You have spent so much of this season fighting for things that should have been available to you without a fight. fighting to be seen in spaces where your gifts were evident, fighting for access to resources that your work clearly warranted, fighting for recognition from people who should have been your natural advocates. And the fighting has been exhausting, not just practically but spiritually, because it has required you to spend so much of your energy on the maintenance of what should have been freely given. That pattern is breaking, not all at once, but measurably and consistently. What is beginning to happen in this season is that you are going to start receiving what you are actually due, not as the result of fighting harder, but as the natural consequence of being positioned correctly. Things that you have been straining toward are going to begin moving toward you instead. Opportunities are going to find you rather than requiring you to hunt them. People with the right connections and the right resources are going to step into your path in ways that are too specific to be coincidence. This is what it feels like when a chosen one stops swimming against the current and discovers that the current has changed direction. The effort does not disappear, the work does not stop, but the quality of the effort shifts from desperate straining to purposeful movement, from fighting to flow. Now I need to tell you what not to do during this period, because there are specific behaviors that can interrupt the momentum of what is beginning to move. And you need to know what they are so you can avoid them. Do not go back. In the clarity of the beginning of the door season, you are going to feel the pull to return to old environments, old relationships, old patterns of thinking that feel safe because they are familiar. Resist this pull with everything you have. The old containers cannot hold what is coming. Going back to them will not protect you. It will delay you. Do not force the timeline. The momentum that is building has its own speed and its own sequence, and the temptation to push it faster than it is moving will always cost you more than the waiting would have. Trust the pace. The pace is not slow. The pace is precise. Do not minimize what you are sensing. When the quiet knowing arrives, when the one clear step presents itself, when the new relationship appears with that unmistakable quality of being sent, do not talk yourself out of it. Do not run it through so many filters of skepticism and past disappointment that you cannot feel it anymore. Your discernment has been sharpened by this season. Trust it. And do not do this alone. Not this part. Not the threshold crossing. Find your people, the ones who speak the language of this season. The ones who understand what it means to wait and to be positioned and to finally begin to see the door. Let yourself be witnessed in this. If this is resonating somewhere deep and true inside you right now, if you can feel the movement I am describing, even before the evidence has arrived in your circumstances, I want you to type the word "ready" in the comments below, not as a performance, as a declaration. You are telling heaven, and you are telling yourself that you are no longer in the posture of waiting without expectation. You are in the posture of a person who knows that something is moving and who is standing ready to step into it when the door opens fully. The door is opening. You were built for what is on the other side of it, and you are more ready than you know. What you just received in that last section was not simply information about what is coming. It was a repositioning, and I want you to feel the difference between those two things before we go any further, because what happens in this part of the message is going to require you to be in a different inner posture than the one you arrived with. Information can be received from a distance. You can hold information at arm's length, evaluate it, decide what to do with it, and remain essentially unchanged by it. But a repositioning requires you to be present, fully, personally, specifically present. Not as a listener processing content, but as a person standing at the actual threshold of an actual change in the actual life you are living right now. And that is exactly where I need you to be for this section. Because what I am about to give you is a name, not a label, not a category, a name. And in the ancient understanding of naming, the giving of a name was never a casual act. It was a declaration of identity. It was the speaking aloud of what something truly was, beneath the surface presentation, beneath the circumstantial evidence, beneath the story that the season had been telling about it. When heaven names something, it is not describing what it sees. It is calling forth what it placed there, before the thing itself was fully aware of what it carried. And so I want to name you, the you that has been formed in this season. The you that exists on the other side of years of waiting and grieving and holding on, and almost letting go and choosing one more time to trust. I want to name that person because that person deserves to know who they are before they take another step forward. You are a hope restorer. Sit with that for a moment before I explain it. Do not rush past it to the definition. Let it land first, as a sound, as a weight, as something that either resonates immediately or that needs a moment to settle into the spaces where resistance still lives. A hope restorer. Let it find the part of you that has been waiting to be named correctly. Here is what it means. A hope restorer is not simply someone who maintains their own hope through a difficult season. That would make them resilient, which is beautiful and real and absolutely something you are. But it is not the fullness of what this name carries. A hope restorer is someone whose very presence in a room, in a conversation, in a life, returns to other people the thing they had given up on. You have this capacity. You may not have recognized it yet in its full form, because it has been operating quietly and without out throughout your entire waiting season. In the small ways you showed up for others, even while carrying your own heaviness. In the words you offered to people who were struggling, even when your own situation gave you every reason to keep your remaining strength for yourself. You gave hope when you were running low on it. That is not ordinary. That is a specific and rare gift that marks a particular kind of person. A hope restorer does not restore hope by pretending that the difficult things are not difficult. That is not restoration. That is performance. A hope restorer restores hope by being living proof that the difficult things do not have the final word. By standing in the room, still standing, after everything that tried to put them down. By speaking with an authenticity about the hard parts that makes the hope they carry feel earned rather than naive. When a hope restorer says that it is going to be okay, people believe it. Not because the hope restorer has had an easy journey, but because they have had a hard one, and they are still here and still believing. That is the authority that your season has been building in you. The authority to restore hope in people who have lost it, because you have found yours again after losing it too. This applies to you, not to a general category of spiritual person, not to a vague archetype that sounds encouraging but does not touch your actual life. To you specifically, with your specific history and your specific years of specific faithfulness in specific silence. The people around you, the ones coming behind you in their own difficult seasons, the ones who have not yet found their way to the threshold where you are now standing, they need what you carry. They need the particular quality of hope that only someone who has walked this exact kind of journey can carry, and you are the one who carries it. Now I want to take you somewhere, not physically. I want to take you into a guided experience that is going to make what I just told you feel real in your body, and not just real in your mind. Because truth that lives only in the mind is fragile. Truth that lives in the body, that you have actually felt in the physical space of your own experience, that truth becomes something you can return to, even in the moments when the mind begins to argue against it. I want you to picture yourself standing at a threshold, not a metaphorical one in the vague way that metaphors sometimes float above the actual experience without touching it. A specific one, a doorway, real enough to see in detail. Notice the surface of it. Notice the material it is made from. Notice the quality of the light on the other side of it. Warm and present and clear in a way that the light on your side has not yet fully been. You are standing right at the edge of it, not through it yet, but close enough that if you extended your hand, your fingers would cross the line. Now I want you to turn around slowly and look back at the terrain you have just crossed to arrive at this threshold. Do not look at it with the eyes of someone who is still in the middle of it. Look at it from here, from the threshold, from the position of someone who has made it through. See the distance you have traveled. See the seasons you have walked through. See the nights that felt impossible, and the mornings that required everything you had just to meet them. See the moments when hope was so thin it was nearly transparent, when you could barely find it in yourself to believe that anything was still moving on your behalf. See all of it from this vantage point, from the threshold, and let yourself feel what it actually means that you are standing here and not still back there. You are not back there anymore. You are here at the threshold, and every single step that brought you from there to here was real, and it was enough. And it was exactly what was needed to arrive at exactly this point. Every moment when you chose to believe even slightly, every prayer that felt like it was going nowhere but was going somewhere, you could not yet see. Every day you showed up for someone else, even while your own tank was nearly empty. All of it has been counting. All of it has been building toward this exact place where you are standing right now. Now look around you at the threshold itself. Notice that you are not alone here. There are others standing near you, other chosen ones who have walked their own versions of the same terrain and arrived at their own thresholds in this same season. You cannot see them physically, but you can feel the company of them, the enormous, invisible community of people who have been faithful through the waiting and who are now standing at the edge of what comes next. You belong to that community. You have always belonged to it, and the hope you carry is not just for yourself. It is for every person in that company who needs to look at someone still standing and still believing and find in that sight the permission to keep going themselves. Now turn back toward the door. Look through it at the light on the other side and notice something. Notice that the light on the other side is not strange or foreign or intimidating. It is familiar in the deepest way. It is the light of the life that was always meant for you. The life that was being prepared while you were being prepared. The life that has been waiting at this threshold for as long as you have been walking toward it. You recognize it. Not because you have been there before, but because some part of you has always known it was coming. Some part of you held on to that, knowing through every season that tried to convince you otherwise. And now notice something else. The light on the other side is not only for you. It is large enough, bright enough, abundant enough to spill out behind you and illuminate the path for the people who are still making their way through the terrain you have just crossed. The breakthrough that is about to happen in your life is not just a personal event. It is a signal. It is a beacon. It is the hope restorer stepping into the light, and by doing so, making the light visible to everyone who needs to see that it is real. You are already standing at the threshold. You do not have to arrive somewhere else first. You do not have to become someone else first. You are the hope restorer, standing at the threshold of the doored season, and the door is open. You are already here. Now I want to speak a blessing over you. And I want you to receive it not as words passing through your ears, but as something that lands in the actual soil of your spirit, that takes root there, that begins immediately to do the quiet work that blessings do. May the years that were hard become the very source of the hope you carry, so that your pain is transformed not into bitterness, but into the most powerful and credible testimony of restoration that the people around you have ever witnessed. May every person whose hope has gone thin find their way to you in this coming season, and may what you carry be exactly what they need to find their footing again. May your own hope be restored in full, not in the careful and tentative way of someone who is afraid to hope too much, but completely and generously and without reservation, because you have earned the right to hope without apology. May the dream that you have been protecting quietly through the years of this season now be given its full voice, spoken openly and received with the weight it deserves. May you know, in your body and not just in your mind, that you were never abandoned, that every moment of silence was a moment of active preparation, that every closed door was protecting you from a wrong direction, that every night that felt like the end was actually the last night before the beginning. You are a hope restorer. You are standing at the threshold. The door is open, and what is waiting for you on the other side of it has been waiting there since before you were born, patient and certain and completely undisturbed by everything that has tried to convince you it was not real. It is real. You are real, and you are exactly where you are supposed to be. There is a question that lives underneath everything else in the life of a chosen one who is standing at the threshold of real change. It is not the big philosophical question about purpose or meaning or divine plan, though those questions matter and they have their place. It is a simpler and more immediate question than any of those. It is the question that wakes you up at 2 a.m. and sits at the edge of your bed waiting for an answer. It is the question you carry into every new day without realizing you are carrying it. And the question is this: what do I actually do right now? Not eventually, not in the next season, not when the circumstances shift or the confirmation arrives or the fear subsides enough to make action feel safe. Right now, today, in the life that is actually in front of me, with the resources I actually have and the energy I actually possess, and the clarity that is available to me in this specific moment. What do I do? That question deserves a real answer, not a spiritual deflection, not a reminder to simply trust and wait, because you have been trusting and waiting, and you are ready now for trust to have a practical expression in your daily life. The threshold is not a place to stand indefinitely. It is a place to stand long enough to get your bearings and then to step forward. And stepping forward requires knowing where to put your foot. So let me tell you exactly where to put your foot. Let me give you the practical, specific, actionable description of what is shifting in 3 concrete areas of your life and what you can begin doing right now to align yourself with each of those shifts. The first area is relationships, and the practical action here begins not with finding new people, but with releasing the ones who are completing their season in your life. I know I touched on this in the last section, but there is a specific and practical dimension to this that needs to be addressed plainly. Releasing a relationship does not require a confrontation. It does not require an announcement or an explanation or a formal ending. What it requires is the simple and daily practice of stopping the maintenance, stopping the effort of keeping alive a connection that is no longer reciprocally nourishing, stopping the reaching out that is motivated by guilt or habit rather than genuine desire, stopping the performance of closeness where the actual closeness has already quietly departed. This is not cruelty, it is clarity. And the chosen ones who have done this work consistently report the same thing. Within weeks of releasing the effort to maintain connections that had already organically completed, new people began to appear. Not through deliberate searching, not through networking or strategy, or the careful curating of a social environment, but through the natural movement of a life that has created space. When your relational energy is no longer being consumed by the maintenance of what is ending, it becomes available for the recognition of what is beginning. And what is beginning in the relational landscape of a hope restorer stepping into the door season is the arrival of people who speak your language. People who understand the kind of journey you have been on without requiring a lengthy explanation. People who carry a complementary gift, who need what you have and have what you need, and whose arrival in your life will feel less like a new acquaintance forming and more like a missing piece settling into a space that was always its shape. The practical action you can take today in this area is simple. Make a list, mental or written, of the relationships in your life that you have been maintaining primarily through effort rather than through genuine mutual nourishment. You do not have to do anything dramatic with that list. Simply stop initiating for 2 weeks and observe what happens naturally, what stays, what fades, and most importantly, what new thing begins to appear in the space that the stopping creates. The second area is purpose, and this is where I need to be the most specific because it is the area where chosen ones most often get stuck in the gap between knowing they are called and knowing what the calling actually looks like on a Tuesday morning. The practical action here is built on a principle that I stated briefly in the last section and that I want to expand now with full clarity. You are not looking for the whole staircase. You are looking for one step, one clear, small, doable step in the direction of the thing that your spirit has been whispering to you throughout this entire season. And the discipline of this season, the specific practical work of this threshold, mount, is to identify that one step and take it before the Fitz has time to construct an argument against it. Here is how to find the one step. Sit quietly, ideally during the 7 minutes of receptive stillness that the surrender protocol has been building into your daily life, and ask yourself one question only. If I knew that heaven was fully behind this, if I had complete certainty that the assignment was real, and the support was there, and the outcome was secured, what is the one thing I would do today? Not the 10 things, not the plan, the one thing. The answer to that question is your step, and the discipline is to do that one thing before you do anything else today, before the obligation, before the task that feels urgent but is not actually first. But one step first, every single day. The staircase reveals itself one step at a time, and only to the person who is moving. There is something else I want to say about purpose that is practical, in a way that might surprise you. Stop waiting for the purpose to feel completely comfortable before you pursue it. The calling of a hope restorer, by its very nature, will always involve a degree of vulnerability. Because restoring hope in other people requires you to be honest about the places where hope was hard to find in your own life. It requires you to speak about the real journey rather than a sanitized version of it. And that level of honesty will always feel slightly exposed, slightly risky, slightly uncomfortable. That discomfort is not a sign that you are moving in the wrong direction. It is a sign that you are moving in a direction that is real enough to matter. Safe purposes do not change lives. Honest ones do. The practical action you can take today in this area is to write down, in as much detail as you can manage, the answer to this question. What is the one specific thing related to my calling that I have been putting off because I am waiting to feel more ready. Write it down, look at it, and then ask yourself honestly whether any amount of additional waiting is actually going to produce the readiness you are waiting for, or whether the readiness only comes through the doing. The answer for every chosen one who has ever stood at this threshold is that readiness comes through the doing. It always has. It always will. The third area is resources and opportunities. And the practical action here is the most counterintuitive of the three, which is why I want to approach it carefully and give it the full space it deserves. The practical action in this area is to stop fighting for what is yours and start positioning yourself to receive it. Those sound like similar things, but they are profoundly different in their energy and in their outcome. Fighting for what is yours puts you in a posture of scarcity, of lack, of pursuing something that is running away from you. Positioning yourself to receive what is yours puts you in a posture of abundance, of alignment, of moving towards something that is also moving toward you. The practical difference between these two postures shows up in very specific daily behaviors. Fighting looks like constantly scanning for opportunities and forcing entry into spaces that are not yet ready to receive you. Positioning looks like developing your gift to its highest current level every single day, regardless of whether anyone is watching, so that when the door opens, you are ready to walk through it fully rather than half prepared. Fighting looks like spending your energy on convincing people of your value. Positioning looks like spending that same energy on actually increasing your value, on learning, growing, deepening the skill and the insight and the wisdom that your assignment requires. Fighting looks like anxious monitoring of what others in your field or your community are doing and measuring yourself against their progress. Positioning looks like keeping your eyes on your own lane, on your own step, on your own daily practice, and trusting that the appointed moment will bring the right eyes to what you are building. The practical action you can take today in this area is to identify one specific way in which you've been spending energy, fighting for recognition or access or resources, and redirect that energy entirely into the development of your gift, just for today, and then again tomorrow, and the day after. This is not passive. This is the most active and powerful thing you can do in the gap between the threshold and the door opening fully, because the person who walks through the door of the door, seasoned with a deeply developed gift, receives what is available there, in a way that the person who spent their threshold time fighting for attention simply cannot. There is one more practical thing I want to say before we move into the final part of this message, and it is about the surrender protocol that I gave you in part 3. I want you to recommit to it right now in light of everything that has been built since then. The 7 minutes of receptive stillness, combined with the genius wave, if you have chosen to bring that tool into your practice, is not a supplement to the practical actions I have just described. It is the foundation of them. It is the daily practice that keeps your inner posture aligned with the outer movement that is happening in all 3 of these areas simultaneously. Without it, the practical steps can become effortful and anxious. With it, they become natural and clear. The 7 minutes every morning is the thing that makes everything else possible. Do not skip it. Do not negotiate with yourself about whether today is a day you have time for it. You always have time for 7 minutes, and so 7 minutes are the difference between a day that is driven by old habits and old fears and a day that is guided by the clarity of a mind and a spirit that have been properly positioned to receive. You know what to do now. Not everything, not the whole staircase, but the one step, the one conversation, the one daily commitment, the one area of release, the one area of development that is enough to begin. And beginning, chosen one, is everything. We are at the end of this message together. And before I say anything else, I want to say thank you. Not the kind of thank you that is offered out of courtesy or habit, or the social obligation to close a conversation politely. A real thank you. The kind that comes from knowing what it actually cost you to show up here today. Because I know that showing up is not always simple. I know that there are days when pressing play on something like this requires a kind of inner courage that nobody around you recognizes or names, because from the outside it looks like someone watching a video, and from the inside it is someone deciding one more time to believe that there is still something worth hearing, still something worth receiving, still something worth staying open for. That decision, that quiet and persistent, and sometimes barely their decision to stay open, is the bravest thing a person in a long waiting season can do. And you made it today, and I do not take that lightly. I want to speak to the part of you that almost did not show up, the part that heard hearing words before and has felt the lift of them, and then watched that lift fade when the circumstances did not change as quickly as the encouragement implied they would. The part that has learned, through repeated experience, to hold hope at a careful distance, because hope that gets too close has a way of making the disappointment more acute when the breakthrough is slower than expected. I want to speak to that part of you directly and tell it something that I need it to actually hear. The fact that you are still here, still listening, still willing to receive, is not evidence of naivety. It is not evidence of someone who has not yet learned their lesson about getting their hopes up. It is evidence of something that is genuinely rare and genuinely powerful. It is evidence of a faith that has survived its own testing. And a faith that has survived its own testing is a completely different thing from a faith that has never been tested at all. Yours has been tested, and it is still here. And that matters more than you know. You are not alone in this. I need you to feel that as more than a phrase. All across the world, right now, in different time zones and different languages and different versions of the same essential season, other chosen ones are walking into this exact same message. They are sitting in their cars in parking lots because they needed a moment before going inside. They are lying on their bedroom floors in the dark because the bed felt too far away. They are standing at kitchen sinks with the water running because the sound of it creates enough privacy to finally feel something they have been holding back all day. They are in all of these places, and they are hearing these same words, and they are feeling the same recognition that you are feeling right now. The community of the chosen is enormous and largely invisible to itself, because the chosen tend to carry their seasons privately and to assume that the particular quality of their struggle is unique to them. But it is not unique. It is shared. You are in a room that is far more populated than it appears, and not one of the people in that room arrived here by accident. I want to give you one final exercise before we close, and I want you to take it seriously because it is the culmination of everything that this message has been building toward. It is the exercise of laying down the burden, not permanently suppressing it, not pretending it does not exist, but genuinely, intentionally setting it down at the threshold and choosing to step forward without it. Here is how I want you to do this. I want you to bring to mind the full weight of what you have been carrying through this season. Not just one aspect of it, but all of it together. The relational losses, and the career disappointment, and the faith in yourself that eroded, and the dreams that you had to learn to speak more quietly. The nights of insomnia, and the days of unexplained sadness, and the moments of doubt that you have never admitted out loud to anyone. Bring all of it into your awareness at once and feel the actual weight of it, not to torture yourself with it, but to acknowledge it honestly, because you cannot lay down what you have not first fully acknowledged that you are carrying. Feel the weight of it in your body. Notice where it lives, in your shoulders, in your chest, in the space behind your eyes, in the particular quality of exhaustion that is different from physical tiredness, because it does not go away with sleep. Feel all of it. And then, with full intention and full awareness, I want you to imagine yourself bending down and setting it on the ground at the threshold where you are standing. Not throwing it away in anger, not dropping it in despair, but setting it down with the deliberate gentleness of someone who has finally understood that they were never meant to carry it this far, and that the threshold is the appointed place of release. You are not leaving behind the lessons that the weight taught you. You are not leaving behind the depth it built in you, or the compassion it developed in you, or the discernment it sharpened in you. You are leaving behind the weight itself, the heaviness of it, the burden of carrying what was never yours to carry indefinitely. You are setting it down at the threshold, and you are stepping forward without it. And the stepping forward without it is not going to feel like floating, not at first. It is going to feel unfamiliar, because you have been carrying this weight for so long that its absence will feel strange before it feels like freedom. Give it a few days. Give your body and your spirit the time to adjust to the new lightness, because it is coming. The freedom of the unencumbered step is coming, and it is going to change the quality of everything. Now I want to ask you something, and I want you to feel the spirit in which it is asked, which is one of pure genuineness and zero manipulation. If this message has met you somewhere real today, if something in it touched a part of your experience that you have been carrying without language, if the naming of your season or the reframing of your waiting, or the declaration of who you are as a hope restorer landed somewhere in you that will not let it go, I want to ask you to do something with that. Not for me, so that this message can reach another chosen one who is waking into their Monday without anyone to name it for them, who is going to sit through an entire day of obligation and noise, and the performance of being fine without a single moment in which someone sees them accurately and speaks to what they are actually carrying. Like this video so that the people who need it can find it. Share it with one person whose season you recognize in what you heard today. Subscribe so that the next message finds you with the same reliability that this one did. And if you feel genuinely moved to support the work of keeping this kind of content available to the people who need it most, the donate link is in the description below. Give what you feel moved to give, nothing more and nothing less. Every contribution, regardless of its size, is an act of choosing that another chosen one deserves to be seen, and that choice matters. And one more thing. If the genius wave met you somewhere in the middle of this message, if the section about theta and gamma and the 7 minutes of receptive stillness resonated with something that your spirit and your mind both said yes to simultaneously, if you found yourself thinking that this is exactly the tool that would make the surrender protocol work at the level it is meant to work at, then I want you to know that it is waiting for you. Not as a pressure, not as a final push simply, as an available resource that is ready when you are. The link is in the pinned comment below. The 90-day guarantee means that the only risk is the risk of not trying. And you have already taken far greater risks than this one in the service of your journey. The genius wave is there. The pinned comment is there. And so is the version of you that is ready to step into the next season, with every available tool in hand, with every support in place, with every resource that has been prepared for this moment activated and working on your behalf. You came into this message carrying something heavy. You are leaving it standing at a threshold with your hands beginning to open. That is not a small thing. That is the thing. That is the moment that everything else has been building toward. The moment when a chosen one who has been faithful through the hard and the silent and the long finally stands at the edge of what was always coming and chooses, one more time and with new understanding, to step forward. Step forward, hope restorer. The door is open, the light is real, and heaven, which has been watching every step of your journey through every season that tried to convince you it was not paying attention, is doing now what it was always going to do at this moment. It is celebrating. Not because you finally got it right, but because you never stopped showing up. And that, to heaven, is everything.